Whether it's business or personal, fail but fail fast. I had a head injury at work. How much worse can it get? I'm already at rock bottom.
What are some examples of where parents with athlete kids can go to learn more about leveraging this technology or this research to help enhance the performance of their kids?
Here's the biggest problem. There are a lot of microbiome companies. Okay, none of them are able to get it past the FDA hurdle. What's different with us is
Thank you for joining us for another episode of the Hidden Foundations podcast. I'm here today with Archie Menezes, who is a serial entrepreneur, a startup founder. Talk to me a little bit about your journey. How did you end up here outside of Philadelphia? And what are you currently working on?
First of all, thank you for having me here.
Thank you.
It's an absolute pleasure. Yeah. Well, what brought me to the United States was I used to be a banker in my yesteryears.
Okay.
I was regional head with a bank called HSBC. And what brought me to the US was an intra-company move within HSBC. And how did I land here is actually a crazy story. I had an accident in my life where I had a head injury at work. And because of tunnel vision and my inability to look at screens, there was no way for me to continue in banking. And, and sometimes extenuating circumstances, put you in a position to do things that you wouldn't otherwise think you'd even do when you have, a comfortable life, a paycheck coming. It doesn't make you really take those risks to do things that you. So yeah, that's my story. And that's when this is about 8.5 years ago is when I started a geospatial analytics company, because back in the day, I did a lot of credit lending, by the way, on the banking side. So, studying financials, cash cycles, whether it's receivables financing or asset-based lending or balance sheet financing, whatever it is. So I had a very deep understanding of businesses and how they function. So I always looked for, and I still do, I look for tipping points in, in markets or industries or, or policies or what have you. And that's where I place my bets. And at that time, satellite imagery was just about beginning to get commoditized. It was earlier used by government and military and so on and so forth. So there's a commercial aspect that I knew would take off. So with my tunnel vision, I was rehabbing for 10 months and I had all the time in the world to put this together with a childhood friend of mine, actually. We met when we were 3.5 years old in kindergarten. So he was my partner, and, I've been blessed with good people that I could rely on. So despite my, my being incapacitated, I did have that support system with, with good friends and good partners.
So let me drill into one aspect of this, which I'm curious about. So I think if you had a serious injury and you were somewhat offline, it would be very easy to not have the resiliency or the determination to explore a new startup and to try something new. Where did that come from for you? Why was it in this time period in your life that you decided this is the best time for me to do a startup?
Good question. Great question. So some perspective, every time, we looked at providing businessmen with facilities and, you drill deep into the finances, and these are decently sized businesses, 15, 20, 30 million. And you go down to the, to the analytics of it and ask them questions like, hey, what's your customer lifetime value, or what's your cost of customer acquisition? And, you very often, I'll tell you get deer in headlights kind of look. And I'm like, one of the things that occurred to me was dude, if I ran a business and I ran a watertight ship, so that was always in my subconscious mind, but I didn't have the guts to do it. And I'll be honest with you, I was very, very scared at that point in time. And you know, I did seek help. I went and sought help because I was very close to depression at that time because of the uncertainties, and uncertainties push you. Um, I think for me, people react differently to uncertainties, and for me, my thought process was, how much worse can it get? I'm already at rock bottom.
Sure.
The only way, the only way is up.
Yeah.
So
So let me drill in on that. When you say you sought help, was that through traditional talk therapy? Or was it different?
I saw a therapist for some time.
Yeah.
The good thing is, I come from a family of, my sister is a therapist as well, but she put me in touch with someone that's also a life coach, if you know what I mean. So the way, I've seen how therapists typically go, but this person was more than just a therapist for me, help me, help me along the way to understand that, it's okay if you have to take the time to take a step back, and getting that kind of support was good. I've had I'm in touch with my childhood friends since we've been with my kindergarten friends. In fact, one of them was my partner. So for me, those kind of relationships, when you have someone that puts his hand on your shoulder and says, "Listen, we spoke about this 6 months ago. I'm ready to pull the trigger, give up what I'm doing, and do this with you. I have faith in you." And those kind of relationships, and when you have people on your corner, it gives you a different kind of an impetus. And I felt that I would never have been able to do it alone, Kendall. I mean, I want to be very clear about that. I had good people on my side who gave me that confidence to say, and quite honestly, for me, it was like it was a second chance at life, because I had no idea what was in store for me. And I come from a place where we are taught to be grateful for what we have. A lot of people actually told me, "Hey, it happened at your workplace. You can sue your bank for, whatever." But the part of me was, I'm like, listen, I'm in the States because of what they did for me. They moved me internationally. They gave me the opportunity. And it's not that they did it on purpose. It was, you had a vault below a staircase with a metal beam. I mean, it was just there. I should have looked up, and somewhere I also blame myself for it. So for me, that gratefulness is something that has always carried me through. And I didn't sue or do anything. I just wanted to get okay. But for me, that adversity makes you, when you have a lot of options, you're kind of spoilt. But when you narrow that down to just one option, and this is do or die, I gotta do it. I think that kind of focus, there's very less chance of failing.
Yeah. Burn the ships, one way forward.
Yeah.
So you spoke a little bit about fear and being anxious or being fearful of this new startup and the new adventure and the new journey. Did your therapist help you navigate that? Did your friends, did your lifelong foundation help you the most? Who did you lean into as you navigated those decisions?
I think it's a combination. I had a lot of people praying for me at that time. And, I had a lot of time on hand, so I don't pray as much, but, when I was in the deep hole, I did spend a lot more time just to be okay. I don't think my prayers at that time were, for this thing to succeed. I just wanted to be okay because I knew if I was okay, I would, but I can't put my finger on one thing, Kendall. It's a combination of things. It's a combination of good people around you, good support system. And, I think, a voice deep within that that also tells you can do it. I think that is the biggest thing, because my first month was miserable, and I slowly started building from there, and that's the time I had a lot of fear as to, uh, what's going to happen? Will I even be able to drive a car? Will I even be able to? And the doctors didn't guarantee anything. And that was scary. So that's the fear I had was, will I even come back and do something? And
what advice do you have to somebody else that might be going through similar physical or health related issues? How do you persevere when times are hard like that?
I actually have, I dedicate some amount of my time to, and I'm happy to speak with people at that time and use this as an instance, because, not having a support system, or not having people to share with or talk to without being judged is such an important part of that journey. And here's the thing, and a lot of people think, hey, I'll go talk to a psychologist or a therapist and that's going to solve my problem. No, it's not going to. They'll give you, a good, they'll listen to you. They might say, hey, you know what, maybe, you're overthinking, or they might give you some peace, but they're not going to pull you out of that hole. They're not going to put that hand on your shoulder and say, hey, you know what, I'm here for you.
Right.
Let's do this. And so it's beyond that. It's beyond the realm of, it's a combination of things.
What I heard is that you still have to do the work.
Yeah.
They can guide you.
You have to.
But you have to do the work.
You have to do the work.
So someone else is also in that area where they have physical or health issues. You're also encouraging, lean into your support structure, but be ready. You have to do the work.
You have to. There's no one that's going to do it for you.
Right.
Yeah, you have to.
Yeah.
You have to.
Where does that resiliency come from in you? Would that pull yourself up by the bootstraps, get through it? Is that from your childhood? Talk to me about how you were raised.
Back in India, if you said, at least the prior generation, if you said I came from a good Catholic family, it means you're a big family. So my dad was one of 11 kids.
Wow.
He was the second oldest, but just after school, he didn't go to college. He was put to work because they had to provide for the other 9 kids. So fast forward, I recollect when I was going to school, my dad continued to study on a part-time basis to enhance his skills. He was very interested in doing mechanical engineering, so he did a diploma. I still remember my mom packing, something for me and something for dad. He had to continue his studies, and then he moved to the Middle East. My mom was a teacher. They just 2 of us, my sister and me. So we were not the typical Catholic family, right? In that aspect. But growing up was hard because my dad was abroad. He was in Saudi. He worked for General Motors.
Okay.
And he had to do that to earn a little more for us as a family. So we saw him once a year. My mom was a school teacher, and a strict one at that. So, so my earlier life was just with one parent and my sister and me kind of have been there for it. It actually brought us a lot closer because everything my mom had to do, go out, buy stuff, cook. We spent a lot of time together. So, she's actually my closest friend and my biggest support system. We're very close. The reason I moved to the US is because of her. So she's on the West Coast. But growing up, studies, I don't know if you're aware, back in India, there's no concept of social security or anything.
Okay.
Your studies is everything. Not even sport. Today, sport is something else. Back in the day, there's a social stigma attached to it. So if a parent did not educate their children up to a master's level, you're looked at as, as a parent that's not doing their duties, even within the family or within the society. So right till I finished my graduation, I did my MBA, everything was paid for by my parents. And that's why I'm so grateful. And that's why my dad went abroad to work so he could afford that. The same thing with my sister.
Mm-hmm.
So, uh, yeah. So when I said growing up was not the easiest, we were, in my earlier days, I recollect my parents. I mean, we would have. We loved our meat. We loved our non-vegetarian, but that was once a month. Then it became once in 15 days as things started improving, and then it became once every weekend.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, the values that were inculcated in my sister and me is to be grateful no matter what, and that's something that I continue to do. I try to look at. I try not to let negativity pull you down. And even in those circumstances, I had my parents and my sister come and spend the first 1 month with me when I was absolutely down and out. And that's the support system. So when I said I had a friend that became my business partner, I had my family with me at that time,
Mm.
which actually helped me. So yeah, we're very close. And yeah, but I mean, I think those values that are earlier instilled, it's about doing the right thing, and you know and don't try and you know just be good. That's about it. So that's
Yeah.
what I was taught as a kid, and I continue to
It's the gratitude.
try and do.
Right.
Yeah, yeah. Very grateful. I'm very grateful.
So let's talk about your father as he was not around. He was away. There's a sacrifice there. Did he ever address that sacrifice directly with you? Did you acknowledge it? Did he, because he's sacrificing to be away from the family.
You know what? During my growing days, I didn't realize that.
Hmm.
I was not close to him at all. Also, when I'd look at other kids and their parents around, uh, it did, I had a lot of questions. Where's my dad?
Mm-hmm.
I, uh, Well, I used to play sport. I'm a musician. I used to play. I used
But it
to
was the
sing
opposite.
for my concerts. My mom was busy, so sometimes she would come and I'd see other parents and I'd be like, and it's only later that I realized. I mean, in your teens, at least with me, you're not able to, connect the dots. Your thinking it's a very immature way of thinking, and uh, it's only later when I was in my undergrad, I didn't, I was like, I got to spend a little more time with him during my undergrad days because I used to travel to meet him during our vacation.
Mm-hmm.
So I used to see him more often, every 6 months, and we used to go there once a year. He used to come back. Otherwise, it was hard life in Saudi Arabia. He would get 30 days of vacation every year, and he'd come down during Christmas or the summer holidays. And yeah, so it was a very disconnected relationship for most of my life. But uh, I think later in life, once particularly when I was doing my master's, and I realized how expensive this whole thing is. Understood that, I've actually I've had such an easy ride, and it's then that uh, it started kicking in,
Mm-hmm.
and e- ever since I think yeah, since those days until today, there hasn't been a single day in my life where I've not spoken to him.
Wow.
I talk to him every morning. He's the first person that I talk to when I wake up. I speak to him and then ask him how my mom is. Deep in my heart, I have that, sense of regret that, I didn't really, I didn't have a connection with him. I built that connection so much later in life.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, and I'm grateful for that because uh, he's a, it- growing, you want to look at a father figure, right? And if he's not around, it's really hard to, but now when I think about it, despite the distance, um, I think he showed us what a father should do, because I think he made a bigger sacrifice than any of us.
When you were a child, did that manifest as anger? Were you mad at your dad for not being there? Did it make you feel unloved?
I thought he didn't care.
But it was the opposite.
It was the opposite. He went there for our sake. He went there to give me a good life. Growing up, I didn't realize that at all. And that guilt, I wish I was I didn't understand this growing up. So, yeah.
Do you think it would have helped if he would have told you the why? Or do you think you wouldn't have heard it?
Back in the day, there were no mobile phones, and calling internationally was extremely expensive. Once in 15 days or once a month, we'd get to talk for 3 minutes, and that itself was very expensive. So, those were factors that added to it as well.
I live next to, I was born and raised the middle of Kansas next to an army base. And oftentimes you would see the troops deploy and the father figure or one of the, right, would leave. And you have a similar structure of sacrifice by a parent that may not be fully recognized by the kids at that time. And there's some similarities that I see with father figures sacrificing for their families or for their kids. That is, I would have classmates that were in a very similar situation. And I'm not sure if knowing that dad is away for a specific reason helps, or if that is fully comprehended by the kids. And that's something I think is worth exploring.
It strikes us a lot later in life, though, because you're right. There's a lack of communication, huge lack of communication, and that time it had to do with other factors like not having the resources or the means to to talk to him to talk to a child like the way it is done today. But in hindsight is a good thing. It makes you realize, in hindsight, I think given the situation that for the first 2 years of my life, I was with my grandparents at their house because everything my dad earned went back to the family. So at 35 or, whenever, we moved to a house of our own, it was like him starting from scratch. And that's why, he had to look for greener pastures to go and, figure out means to get more money. And he never deprived us of anything under the sun. We always had, I wanted a bike during my undergrad days. No questions asked. I got everything I asked for. But, to be a provider and, it's also, India at that time was, was still, was still at an early development stage. So, it wasn't a rich country. You had to, and the Middle East, going to the Middle East it was tax-free income. So that's another, it does add up over a period of time. So, I think somewhere, I wish someone, the only thing my mom used to tell us was, he's there because of you. He's there for all of us. But, you hear that for the 15th time and you're like, okay, he's there for us. So, okay, it doesn't really, I wish someone actually, understanding those optics at a young age is also hard. I think now people talk about it a lot more.
How old were you when you really comprehended it and understood the why?
I was between my 18, 20 years old.
I always joke with my parents that my parents got a lot smarter when I went to college.
Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, so, it's around that time. But I think my teens were very, very I just didn't understand it. I thought we were a very disjointed family, and I'm like, what the heck, whatever. And I just carried on with,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
So how has that shaped you in how you have two daughters now that you're helping to raise, that how has that shaped you in this new structure for you?
Being more communicative, being more, uh, being open, being, telling them the why is, I think, the most important thing. Nobody told me the why. He's doing that for you. But, having deeper conversations more often is, is very, is a very important part of any relationship. Not taking that piece for granted. So
Mm.
yeah, it's just making sure, uh, you take the trouble to hear them out and use every opportunity you can to communicate.
So the gratitude and the positive outlook that your mother instilled on you early in childhood, how are you passing that to your family?
Oh, my mother was a kick-ass mom. If there's someone that uh, taught me who never gave up, she did everything. She used to ride a scooter at that time, with gears on it, so it wasn't a gearless scooter. So, if I learned resilience in life, it's from her.
And how are you passing them on to your daughters?
Uh, Teaching them to be tough. I'm tough with them when they have to be. There are times I want them to not really, I want them to feel a little bit of the pain to see what it takes to, I let them fall, but make sure they don't fall too hard. But and that's a very important part of, because I've fallen down numerous times, but I've understood what not to do on my own.
Okay.
And that comes from those little falls that you have. Get up, dust yourself, and move on. But I don't believe in mollycoddling anyone too much, because you want them to uh, have their own journey, but you know but also allow them to, how do I say this, whether it's business or personal, fail, but fail fast. Don't take it slowly and wait for that one day for that big fall to happen. So I'm a big believer in, do the little things, fail but learn, and pivot if you have to, but fail fast. That's what I tell everyone.
Do you apply that in startup world as well?
100%, yes.
Yeah. So let's talk about your current startup journey. What are you working on in the startup space, and how are you applying some of the lessons you learned in early childhood and life to your new business?
Oh, that's a great one. So the companies I sold had to do with, I looked at trigger events in markets, and that's what drives me to. I've been an investor in a few companies, but I'm not someone that writes a check. I'm someone that participates, usually as a CFO, because I make sure that we dot our I's and cross our T's, and take it to a stage where I'm able to then at least bring it to a stage where it gets funding, and then I say, okay, fine, now it's. So the two exits I've had have typically been that's the route I've taken. Uh, the thing that I looked at with this startup, it's called Specialized Biotics. Back in 2023, December, for the first time, the FDA approved live microorganisms to be put into therapeutic drugs. So for me, that's a big trigger event. Never before, has that happened. And if we look at trends, 2 months ago, the NIH stopped funding of animals in clinical trials.
Okay.
So it's all heading in one direction. And so again, for me, trust is a big part in business. I just because I meet someone and we click, we drink the same scotch, or we support the same team means nothing to me. It takes a long time for me to build that trust. And so the guy that I'm working with is someone that's been making drugs for the last 25 years, someone I went to undergrad school with. So for me, that's important, right? One thing I've had failures in business, but I've seen the failures have happened when you have to look over your back too, and for me, that's a big no-no. I've learned enough to say, hey, you know what? That is a toxic relationship. So yeah, what we're doing right now, everybody talk about AI and putting a ton of money to figure out buying patterns and what have you. I'm on the board of a company that's responsible for that does responsible AI, where you help banks and financial institutions. So I guide that company. I help them with with their go to market, and so we put guardrails around regulation to make sure that you're compliant at all times. There's no data drift, there's no hallucination, and what have you. So, but what I'm doing on the human side is there's our bodies are filled with millions of bacteria, and they how each of those interact with each other is what the study of microbiome is. And coincidentally, the team that took Cirrus Biotherapeutics to get the FDA approval and took them public are the 4 members there are my co-founders in this new business. Okay. In addition to Sohang, who's my classmate from undergrad. So there are 5 of us who are doing this, and the long story short, we're using to understand the correlation between that millions of bacteria. It's very important to you need AI for that. So long story short, it's going to be a data and AI company where you're actually looking at specialized strains of bacteria, studying how they interact on people, and we're actually creating drug candidates for the pharma industry. That's the long story short.
So I'm not overly familiar with this space. So I have a couple of questions here because I don't fully comprehend the nuance of the trigger event that you saw and how that impacts where you're going now.
Great.
So break down for me, as somebody who's not overly familiar with what you indicated was the specific trigger event that led you to walk the path to the startup.
Couple of things. The trigger event was the FDA allowing live bacteria to be in therapeutic drugs. Let me give you a couple of examples. We're working with a company that actually supplies specialized meals to athletes. Okay, they're amongst the top 2 companies that do this. Now, basketball players or bodybuilders who are competitive in sport, they're very careful about what they eat, because if there's steroids and they can get suspended. So that's why they have very controlled meals that are packaged and sent to them in a tamper proof. So what's the biggest problem for sports people? It's lactic acid buildup. It's lactic acid buildup. So what we do is we provide them we've got something called, or rather the symbiotics that we build, or the pre and probiotics that we build for them, is bacteria that feeds on lactic acid. Okay. And we study, we also collect their stool samples to study the kind of, the kind of reaction of their microbiomes, and that actually helps us create studies with muscle atrophy. Another classic example, the biggest cause of liver toxicity is ammonia buildup in your liver. So our body can't excrete ammonia, and in such cases we actually look at specific bacterial strains that convert ammonia to ammonium, and your body can excrete ammonium. So these are it's precision medicine, and it's absolutely 99% of what's out there is snake oil, There's no such thing as, they give you a tub of curd and say, there's so much of bacteria there. It means nothing because, what you need the form that you consume this in. It has something called allogetinins. It needs to be converted to urolithin. Your body needs to have urolithin to actually convert that and to convert that yogurt into the right you know probiotic for you. Otherwise, it's of no use. So what we're doing is um, you know absolute science-based products that we're not selling anything. We're doing a B2B2C model.
Okay.
So and what that does is it gives us data in addition to our tie-ups with hospitals and all of that. And I'm the only non-science guy. In my undergrad, my specialization was microbiology. Before I went on to do my master's in MBA in finance. And so I have a fairly decent idea about my basics in microbiology is pretty solid. But aside from me, they all PhDs from Yale, Princeton, Harvard, and MIT. And I'm the only, but yeah, I'm the business guy that actually helps them with, on the business side of it. So yeah, it's an awesome team who've been, and that's another thing I always bet on. I don't take everything on my shoulders. I look for a good team that that's there to execute. And yeah, I also look at what the market commands for such, if I look at the valuations of companies that have just the data, it's in the hundreds of millions. There's a company that did microbiome studies during COVID, and they shut down because once COVID was gone, nobody needed that. But that data sold for 250 million.
Wow. Yeah.
Just that data. So this is not going to be about, but to gather that data, you have to do a few different things. But at the end of the day, it's a data and AI company.
Let me pull this back to parenting for a second, because you said a couple of things in there that I think are interesting, and I want to try to make them real or tangible. And let's use my daughters as an example. You talked about nutrition in terms of athlete performance and impacting what you're feeding athletes to elevate performance. How can you make that real or tangible for a listener or a parent that has kids where you're trying to help figure out the right nutrition to keep them focused in school or to maximize performance on the field?
That's such a profound question. Yeah. So first of all, with the athletes, I don't think we can. What we're working on is helping them recover fast.
Okay.
It's not going to enhance their performance, but it's going to help them with the recovery. The study of microbiomes has picked up so much in the recent past. First of all, drug efficacy or the success rates with your clinical trials is less than 5%. The reason our drugs are so expensive is because there's a 95% failure.
We have to fund the failures as well.
Sure. To fund the failures. The reason there's a gold rush for microbiomes is because that is getting flipped. You're using what was the earlier trend? You have chemicals, you put them into animals and see how they react, and then look at doing the same thing with humans. No, right now with microbiomes, you're putting bacteria derived from humans and plants. Doing your lab studies, it's not going to have the same effects as a chemical on people. Not at all. So it's a much more and the tests that you're doing, for example, converting ammonia to ammonium is something that's extremely targeted. And so there are different diseases. So we're actually working with a slightly more senior group. I think because they are from family offices, they wanted us to do something with Parkinson's disease. They said, can you, so we actually getting some, some research from, so the head of gastroenterology at Harvard is on our advisory board as well. And he's our chief medical consultant. So he's actually helping us, get a little more information around that. So it depends on what kind of study you want to do. You focus on that, because the generic probiotics has no meaning with this, with the study of microbiomes getting deeper and deeper. It's very targeted, if you know what I mean. So if there's something that's for concentration, or for mental health, those are areas we've not touched upon. But yeah, I mean, eventually with time, we do intend to look at those kind of critical areas. That Parkinson's is another. Our tagline is, people talk about longevity, but living those lives, living that life, putting life into your longevity is more important.
Sure.
So that's our tagline, and that's what I like about this is there's deep science, and what I did earlier also was involve deep science. We were decoding satellite data and making sense of what, using machine learning and AI, when about 8 years ago, when it was not even spoken about. It was still early days. The booms in the last 4 years. So I believe the same thing is bound. I mean, is happening in the microbiome space. But there's also a lot of other factors. For example, you need some, and we're looking at a lot of patents as well. For example, none of the probiotics we take or we consume today have an engrafting element.
Okay.
What's an engrafting element is you need it to stick to a membrane.
Okay.
And only then is it you're able to get the full benefit of it. Otherwise, if it's just a pass through without an engrafting element, it's of no use.
Right.
So yeah, so those are some of the elements that that we put into what we into what we produce as a formula. So we produce formulas for others, and we sell that, we license that. So we're never going to be a B2C company.
Right.
But
some of your clients have the consumer facing products.
Yeah, absolutely.
And what are some examples of where parents with athlete kids can go to learn more about leveraging this technology or this research to help enhance the performance of their kids?
It's still so early. Part of there's two parts in our future journey. One is we're working with the Wharton School of Business. Coincidentally, the management chair of Wharton School of Business is our investor and also on our board. He's a full-time board member, and the folks there are actually doing a study about with regard to the deep and it has to do with how do you educate or create awareness, more than educate. It's about how do you create awareness on on the uses of how microbiomes impact different people and at different stages. Our microbiomes are never the same, by the way. I could travel to India, eat something else, and it behaves differently. So and what we're working on is a cohort of about 100,000 people, and that's gathering data from about at least 100,000 people, categorizing them differently. For example, I could be taking heart medication with this. You could be doing kidney medication, and you could be diabetic. So we create cohorts of such people, and then study at least a year's cycle, and so that's a long story short. So even if someone wants to do something with, say, hey, I need this for my kids, unless we do a deep study of, it doesn't really cut it. And it's very different from, you have people that have apps that say, tell us what you ate, and okay, I ate a pizza, and then you say, okay, this could be that's consumer grade data, which will not fly, for something like an FDA approval. And there are companies that say, we're going to create a customized probiotic just for you. That is scientifically prohibitive in today's world. You can create it for a cohort, but if you have 10,000 customers, doing it for those 10,000 people is not. I mean, there's no truth to it in the first place. Yeah.
Do you think that AI will change that to make it potentially feasible?
In the future, yes, 100%. Particularly, I don't think as yet, but with quantum techniques coming in the future, yes, because even now it's very difficult. But I wouldn't say it's impossible. But in today's day and age, it's not. It's definitely not. And it's still so early in that journey that in the microbiome journey for people to make those kind of claims.
Yeah.
And it's we know that it's not. It's scientifically prohibitive. That's it.
Yeah. Amazing time to be alive, though, right? See this all come together.
It is, and I'm both excited and waiting to see what. I mean, it's also scary in a way that I have the other opportunity I see is you're seeing more and more large companies or large pharma companies run out of new products. So
I don't have anywhere else to go.
Yeah. So this is, I'm a believer that. So you asking about the trigger event? These are the things these are the signals I look at.
And then how do you decide? You obviously had an inflection point where you looked at all different trigger events, and then you said, "This is the one that I'm going to go and shape a company about." Why is this specific trigger event different or better or preferred over the other ones that you're mapping at the same time? Because it's not a single trigger event, right? There's multiple. I mean, we've talked about a few in this conversation already.
Yeah. I think it's the timing. It's just the timing. I mean, the NIH deciding to, stop funding of, animal-based clinical trials, that's coincidence. But I think the biggest event was allowing. So the CEO, my co-founder of this company, had a microbiome company with Gary Rufkin, who won the Nobel Prize last year. They had a microbiome company 7 years ago, but there was no path to monetization. The FDA had no idea what am I going to do with this. So there was no FDA clearance, so there was no path. So they actually shut it down. So yeah, so people in the team have done this before, but if there's no path forward, if you're not going to be able to monetize it, what are you going to do? So
Yeah. Fast.
So now is that time.
How do you approach leadership with the team, and as you set the culture of your new business? What strategies or techniques are you setting up when you hire new employees, or who's helping to shape the culture of the new business?
So the CEO and me work closely. We work closely every day. And like I said, everyone else are very deep tech scientists. So for them, understanding the business side of it, or even understanding what a fundraise means, is new to them. So there's a lot of trust that they've obviously seen Sohang, who's the CEO. He's had 3 exits. So they have someone that's been there, done that, and I pretty much manage everything on the finance and the business side of it. So from a culture standpoint, I think every one of us, there's a lot of deep trust that goes in, because everybody come with a certain area of specialization. Varun used to be the head of AI with Cirrus Biotherapeutics. Julie, who's our microbiome head, was head of microbiology at Cirrus Biotherapeutics. Tim, who's the head of data, was again in that same role in the earlier company. I think we lucked out. For me, having the right team is possibly the most important thing. I can't have someone fresh off the boat who says, you know what, I've studied this, I know my shit, I'm gonna change the world. And here's the biggest problem. There are a lot of microbiome companies, okay, none of them are able to get it past the FDA hurdle. What's different with us is I have a core team that's done this in the past, that knows not what to do. There are 20,000 people that know what to do, that knows what not to do. And I think that's a key part of any business. I can get there are 20 people that will tell me what to do, but understanding what not to do, because you save time, you save money, you save resources, and your path is a lot faster when you know what not to do. So I think that's why I'm betting on this team. It's not a team of freshers, it's experienced folks that and even with my earlier company, it was a set of people that knew that had a vision, and that vision backed with I'm a numbers guy. Yeah. Pardon me, the banker in me is never going to go out. I look at everything from a risk standpoint. I might be a blocker in some aspects, asking more questions, but those questions are more clarifying questions. And once I'm convinced, and then I step on the gas pedal.
How much of these conversations do you share with your father as you speak to him? You said basically you talk to him daily now. Is it related to business? Is it more related to personal life?
It's more related to he's an avid sports fan, so cricket. I mean, he used to play cricket a lot. So there's always some match going on. So that's our favorite topic. From a business standpoint, I just give him the highlights of. I don't go deep into it because he was a mechanical engineer, and for him, understanding leadership or understanding what we do today, I've tried talking to him a few times, and he says, wow, this is great stuff, it's very complicated for me, and he's honest to say that, but he always gives me a hearing. But to your point, there's very little that I talk to him about the successes, about some failures, and sometimes I just need to ramble, and he gives me his ear, and I'm happy about that. But no matter what, he's always been a supporter.
And for your mental fitness, do you still talk to a traditional talk therapist, or do you have any other? Where else do you become a better leader in your business?
What I love about my about the person that I went to, about my therapist, she was also a life coach. Her goal was to help me look for symptoms and address them. A lot of people don't do that. And I think enabling people, and I learned from that, enabling people to look at these signs and not ignore them is such a key part of, is such a key part of, anyone's growth, I would say. Never ignore these signs. So, I mean, for me, being able to be empowered, and how do you empower someone? By, giving them the tools to deal with whatever situation, So I think that's a very important element.
So, where can people find you online? Where can they talk to you?
I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Facebook. I'm not active on Facebook and Instagram. I just have those accounts. But to answer your question, the other thing I do is I have a good ecosystem of friends. Peter Mastrogiacomo is one of them. I have mentors that have been with me for a long time. So if it's business related, I pick their brains,
Yeah.
and uh, yeah, I have a good set of. The good thing with my life so far is I've made some great relationships along the way, and it's never been about the money. Right. It's how can I help? And if I can help someone, I do that. I mentor 3 companies right now, and it's just I don't try and bite more than I can chew. But yeah, I mean, I make sure I have fun. I think that's the most important thing. So when I wake up the next day, I wanna really look forward to, how fun this day is going to be. And that's something I impart to my colleagues and a team as well. If you getting up and looking at this as oh my gosh, I got to finish this task. Maybe you're having a bad day, but if it's happening every day, you might wanna, you might want to rethink how you want it to pan out.
We've talked about gratitude and how important the gratitude is in your upbringing. If you had to speak about gratitude to my daughters, what would you say?
Gratitude comes from, realizing how much you have and what you have versus people, that don't have that same benefit. There's so much going around. There's so much happening that, it is. I'll give you an example. I wanted my daughter just finished her graduation, and I introduced her to this non-profit called Studio Samuel. Studio Samuel uh, is a non-profit that helps girl kids in Ethiopia. So back in Ethiopia, because of the poverty, girls are sent to work. Here, people live paycheck to paycheck. There, you're living meal to meal.
Okay.
So the little girls are sent into fields to go and work so they could earn their money to buy their food for the day. So Studio Samuel actually works to supply, they're an NGO that supplies food to these girls in school. So that's a motivation for them to say, hey, don't go into the fields,
Go to school.
go to school, we give you food. The problem that they encounter 10 years later is that there are lots of other aspects that, for example, talking about menstruation is a taboo in school or at home. I think it's the culture, and and they didn't know how to deal with growing girls. And so I actually asked my daughter to get on to seeing what she can do there. There's the University of Minnesota had a study that they had FAQs, they had a process outlined just for something like this, and my daughter actually built the app for them. It's the first Google map in the Ethiopian language for these girls. Maybe after this, I'd be glad to show you some pictures of how excited they were. So she got into building this. So no job, sit and do this for the first 6 to 9 months of your life after your undergrad. What she saw changed her life, her outlook to life. So sometimes these examples. So for example, these girls didn't know that they could have a shower when they had their periods.
Right.
So things like that are like, she's, really, open your eyes. So sometimes it's not about, it's about exposing them to some of these experiences, and then you're like, wow, so sometimes that practical experience is important. If I could, say, hey, you know what, let's do a trip to Asia sometime, or let's do a trip to Haiti, or and seeing is believing, and that I think causes a lot of particularly with the present gen. And the example I gave you was with my own child.
Yeah, I love that.
I wanted her to see what's going on and feel grateful for what you have. We very often forget that.
Sure.
So yeah, I mean, this was a classic example. Sorry about digressing into the examples, but
love it.
But
That's
yeah,
great.
But yeah,
I'd love to look at the photos. I really appreciate your time today in this discussion. I found it really fascinating to hear the twists and turns along the way. I'm glad your health is a lot better and that there's a good recovery there. I'm excited to learn more about your company and look forward to staying in touch.
absolutely. Pleasure is mine.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me here.
Thank you again for joining us on today's Hidden Foundation podcast. The easy and free thing you can do to help us spread the word is like, comment, and subscribe. So if you know of someone that would care about this information, please share this and come with us on our journey. Thank you so much.